All right, how's it going, everyone? Gamma Fighter here, number one Lady of Vine Simp, coming at you with another Age of Sigmar video. And in this video, we're going to be going over heroes in Age of Sigmar and how you can use them even better than you're already using them. But first, we'll do a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about tactics and advanced tactics and that kind of thing in this video, but I am mostly a hobbyist. This channel started as a fan channel of Sylvaneth, mostly because I like the models and everything, but the rules are really cool too. And going into 4th edition, everything changed for the sylvaneth, and so I wanted to start talking about it, sharing my experiences, and hearing back from the community as well. But take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I don't play at a competitive level. I'm not entering tournaments and getting top 4 or anything like that. I'm just playing casually mostly. I'm in a league now, but even that I'm approaching it casually. I want to win, but the main thing is to have fun with my toys on the table and do the best that I can. So the other thing is we're going to be using Sylvaneth as a case study in this video, but I really do believe that this can be applied to any faction, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that at the end of the video. So, starting into it, the Lady of Vines. This is why we're talking about the Lady of Vines here. She is a bad hero. But let me first say, this is my painted Lady of Vines. I love it. I'm so happy with how it turned out. And she's been my favorite hero for a long time. I think she may be even my favorite model in all of Age of Sigmar. And even ever since she was introduced, I've loved the things that she can do, like back in 3rd edition, the stuff that was on her war scroll, and even what is on her war scroll now, even though it hasn't really seemed to find a place in 4th edition so far. She is, largely seen as a bad hero, but I think she's better than most people think. But here's the thing. Mostly in the previous General's Handbook, I tried to get her to work. I didn't play that much, but when I did, I was trying to get Lady of Vines to work really well in an army. And it just was not going very well. And I think I finally realized that I've been using her all wrong. So if you use the hero in the right way, I think that can take a bad hero, like the Lady of Vines may be bad right now, but I think using her the right way can take her from being a bad hero to being a good hero. And importantly, it can take a good hero to being a great hero. And then most importantly, it can help you to be a really great player, going from just a good player. So we can think of Age of Sigmar and the comparison to chess, all right? The heroes that we have, these are force multipliers, and you can think of them as being hidden behind your pawns and defended by the pawns that are more, disposable pieces that you have. You can kind of think of your heroes as your stronger pieces in chess, like a rook or a queen. And just like with a rook or a queen, you want to keep them safe. You want to use them, but you also want, most importantly, to protect them. And you never want to lose them unless you can sacrifice them to win the game. And just like in chess, protecting your queen too much is going to cause you to lose games. And learning how to sacrifice your queen to win the game is actually going to help you to win more games. It's counterintuitive, but if we can learn how we can sacrifice our heroes in Age of Sigmar, then we can become better players at Age of Sigmar as well. And I think that's going to help us to win games. So that's what we're talking about in this video, how throwing away your heroes actually will help you to win more. So we can think of them as reverse bodyguards. All right. So here we have the Lady of Vines saying, "Leave the kurnoth hunters alone." This is one of my favorite memes here. But this is a topic that I really haven't seen discussion on at all. And I kind of feel like I came up with it by myself. Maybe this is just something that the top level players find so obvious that they don't actually talk about it in any videos that they do. Or maybe this is just kind of an unspoken thing that everyone kind of already knows. But just in case anyone else isn't familiar with it, just like I wasn't familiar with it, I want to share this with you guys here. So part of the problem was I was thinking of the Lady of Vines as needing to be around for her support and needing to be protected so that I don't lose access to the utility that she has. But actually, a reverse bodyguard means that it's actually good for you to sacrifice her. So normally a bodyguard unit is going to be a unit of regular models that is there to take damage and prevent damage from going on to the hero. You can think of like the praetors in the Stormcast Eternals. A reverse bodyguard, on the other hand, is going to be a hero that goes ahead and takes damage on behalf of a unit. So what makes a reverse bodyguard? It's going to be a hero that does 3 things. They have to be strong in terms of the support and the utility that they provide your army. You want them to be a tempting target for your opponent to go after. You want them to be durable, And this is so that your opponent has to commit some level of serious power to taking them out. They can't just throw one of their foot heroes at your hero. They have to commit maybe one of their full hammers to it. And they have to be afraid of splitting their attacks, because if they split their attacks, they might not be able to finish off the hero. And then they have to be disposable enough that it's okay to sacrifice them sometimes. So what I mean by that is, when we look at this strong support and utility, you want the opponent to want to target them down, to target your hero down. But you don't want them so strong and so important to your army that losing them makes you automatically win the game. So, I'm not an expert on all the other factions, but I think of stuff like Catagros and Usharan, where they enable so much of your army that most of the time you don't want to lose them in any situation. Or like Teclis, he's not really meant to be there in combat. He provides so much utility with his spell power and stuff like that you don't want to be just throwing him out there in combat. Another example would be something like Archaon or Alariel, where these things are making up a huge chunk of your list. So it's not really sacrificing them is not really what you want to do, definitely. There may be times where they end up dying, but it's not because you thought it was a good idea to sacrifice them. But so the important thing about this is that you bring one of these reverse bodyguard heroes into combat with one of your strong hammers, and now this forces your opponent to make a choice between two different bad choices. They can put everything into the hero because they don't want to split their attacks, or else your hero might survive. So they throw everything into the hero, and then now you have a full reinforced hammer at full strength, and you can put all of your damage into the enemy. So on their turn, they charged into you, but they didn't do any damage to your hammers. And so your hammers are still at full power. That's pretty bad for your opponent, especially because it happened on their turn. Or they can go ahead and ignore your hero and focus on your hammer unit. But in that case, it's also bad because now your hero sticks around to provide that awesome utility that they have. And a lot of times these reverse bodyguard heroes are going to have pretty respectable damage, maybe not as much as a reinforced hammer or anything like that, but pretty respectable damage to where they're still providing some great, damage throughout that fight. So here's how I figured this out. Here's a screenshot. I did a video where I was comparing the Lady of Vines to the Warsong Revenant back when 4th edition first came out. And even back then, I decided that the Warsong Revenant was better than the Lady of Vines. Now, part of that was because she costs way more. She costs 280 points. Now she's down to 220. But part of that is because I was thinking of her as a regular foot wizard like the Warsong Revenant, someone who needs to be protected. But actually, she is not like the Warsong Revenant very much at all. Here we have some samples from my damage and durability spreadsheet for the sylvaneth here, and her effective health, when you factor in her ward save, her armor save, and then even the Warsong Revenant's ward save, even if she doesn't have her ward save available, her effective health is almost double that of the Warsong Revenant. And if she does have her ward save up at 5 up, then she is triple. This would go to 36 effective health. So she'd be about triple the effective health of a Warsong Revenant. So sure, a reinforced unit of Varangard or some Annihilators with Grand Hammers are still going to be able to just tear through her. That's true. But there are a lot of hammers in the game that will just barely kill her, even if they throw all of their attacks into her, especially with some of the extra defensive utility that she has. The same thing goes with the damage output. She doesn't have an incredible damage output, but compared to the Warsong Revenant, she's got 2 to 3 times more damage output than the Warsong Revenant does. So while it's not incredible, it's still a lot more compared to the Warsong Revenant. And speaking of the damage output, we can just take a look at that here. Oh, no, this is the health. Health again, health comparison. So if we compare her to the Kurnoth Hunters, she doesn't have incredible damage, but if we take a closer look here at the defensive side, defensively, her effective health represents almost 3 Kurnoth Hunters worth of value. Without any wards up, this is about 80%. Her health is about 80% that of 3 Kurnoth Hunters not reinforced. So any damage that is done to her to take her down is when she's in combat with you're with your Kurnoth Hunters as well. The damage that she takes directly prevents damage being done to the Kurnoth Hunters. And here we can see that she can prevent around 2 to 3 Kurnoth Hunters worth of damage, which means that if they take her down, that effectively saved the lives of 2 or 3 kurnoth hunters. A lot of times it's going to be 3 because the opponent won't kill her to the wound. They'll actually overkill her a little bit. So by having her around, instead of the attacks going into the kurnoth hunters and maybe taking out 3 of them, it actually just takes out her instead. So her job, her role in the army is to enable units like the kurnoth hunters with her spells and with her rampage and stuff like that. But one of the ways that she can do that is by taking damage in front of them. So here is a damage comparison against various ward saves for the Lady of Vines and now some reinforced kurnoth hunters. And before we move away from the durability too much, we can look here that Lady of Vines has a 3-up save, and the kurnoth scythes do a reinforced unit of kurnoth hunters with scythes do 12 to almost 13 damage to that kind of an armor save. But if she uses all-out defense, she goes up to a 2-up save, and now they're doing just around 8.5 damage on average, which means that if she gets 1 lucky save or they get a 1 or 2 lucky or unlucky wound rolls that they fail that they should have made on average, then she's got a really good chance of surviving. Not to mention, this doesn't include her ward save. If she has a 5-up ward, then she would save around, on average, around 2 of these 8 points of damage, which means that she would survive. If she uses all-out defense and she has her wards up, she also has a rampage that can give the enemy -1 to hit. So she can be quite a bit tougher than she looks on paper. But even against one of our most powerful units, that unit would struggle to take her out, and they would definitely not want to split their attacks. They would have to commit everything to taking her out. If you were in a mirror match against sylvaneth, and they didn't have like other bonuses and things like that, you use all-out defense on your Lady of Vines, and you have anything else up, a -1 to hit, or a 5-up ward, or even a 6-up ward from something like a Warsong Revenant, there is no way that they're going to want to split their attacks, or else there's a really good chance that she'll survive, which is a really big threat. I'm not trying to say that she's the tankiest thing in the world, but way tankier than a Warsong Revenant, and to the point that even a serious reinforced hammer does have to commit everything to take her out, or else there's a really good chance that she'll survive. Now, if we look at the damage comparison, there's nothing special going on here. Her damage does not really compare favorably to the kurnoth hunters, but if you think of her as being an extension of the kurnoth hunters, against a 6-up armor save, she does more than a third of the damage, more than 33% of the damage. It's actually about 35% of the damage of a reinforced kurnoth hunter unit. So that means her damage offensively is worth about 2 kurnoth hunters. So that means, if they fight into her, on the previous slide we looked at durability, if they fight into the Lady of Vines instead of your kurnoth hunters, she's saving about 3 models worth of kurnoth hunters. On the flip side, if your enemy decides to fight into the kurnoth hunters, maybe they kill 2 or 3 of them, well, she does about 2 or 3 kurnoth hunters worth of damage. Against a 3-up armor save, she does almost half as much as a reinforced unit of kurnoth hunters with scythes. So she provides a lot of value, and so even if she isn't taking the damage on behalf of your kurnoth hunters, you're still able to retain a lot of that damage output. Not 100%, but maybe around 80% of the damage output of the kurnoth hunters that you lost. So it's actually even better if they don't focus her down and they swing into your kurnoth hunters, because then she can still provide that utility. She's a 2-cast wizard. She has that rampage that can give the enemy -1 to hit, all that kind of stuff. So when you bring her, it's almost like if you bring her in with a unit of kurnoth hunters at the same time, like combat kurnoth hunters, then it's almost like double reinforcing them to 9 models instead of 6 models. So and it's not exactly the same, because that would be really, really strong. But because they have different activations, it's not quite exactly equivalent, but it is fairly comparable, and she costs just a little bit more than an extra 3 models worth of kurnoth hunters. So it can be a very valuable asset, actually, as this reverse bodyguard. Here we are going to look at another example with the sylvaneth. So Belthanos, gives run and charge to up to 3 units map wide for the Sylvaneth, which is incredible. We have really slow stuff like Kurnoth Hunters and the Spirit of Durthu, and getting an extra D6, or if you use a command point, 6 inches worth of movement and threat range to the Sylvaneth is actually really good. And also we've got the Scourge-Guy Revenant Seekers right now, and they have a 12-inch flying move, so getting, again, another D6 on top of that actually gives them a huge threat range. So Belthanos is really valuable. I always hate it when I watch tons of battle reports on YouTube, and I always get so frustrated when people throw their Belthanos away on like turn 1, and they never even use the run and charge ability. They might use it like just for Belthanos, and then he just dies. And I'm like, why? You wasted Belthanos. He's very, very valuable. But on the other hand, he also has very high movement, and he has a rampage that gives him even further mobility. So he's a high value target, and then you can use that against your opponent to be able to sacrifice him, and where you get a ton of value out of him being sacrificed. So, for example, if you charge in your Kurnoth Hunters, or your Revenant Seekers, you've got them in combat, and then you can throw Belthanos in there, and you can use his rampage, or because he has a high mobility, maybe your opponent doesn't expect him to be able to get as far as he does, or even, you may rely on the rampage to give you that extra mobility, and he can get into combat with some support foot hero that the opponent thought was safe. They thought it was far enough away and it was protected and that type of stuff. But Belthanos can get in there and he can snipe out that foot hero. And then if your opponent, they don't want Belthanos to just get away with that, so they'll focus all their attacks into Belthanos and take him down, knowing that he's so valuable to your army to give that run and charge. And they can throw all their attacks into the Belthanos, and then that protects, that works as a reverse bodyguard, and now your Kurnoth Hunters and your Revenant Seekers don't take any damage at all this combat, and they're able to swing in with full strength and be able to take out half of the enemy army in a single turn. Now, even if you lose Belthanos in that situation, it's probably a pretty good trade, right? You've taken out a key support piece, and you've done serious damage to their hammer units and taken a lot of their power away. That would be a good time to be able to sacrifice him. On top of that, Belthanos has a 14 health on a 3-up save, which, depending on what you're fighting into, is pretty nasty to try and take down. So the opponent may have to throw more than one of their hammer units into Belthanos to be able to take him down completely. So I've always complained since I started since 4th edition started, I looked at the damage comparisons and stuff between heroes and units. I've always complained that heroes have quite a bit lower power compared to equivalent to like hammer units. Belthanos doesn't do nearly as much damage as a reinforced unit of Kurnoth Hunters with sides. But if we can instead think of them as a health buffer on top of your hammer units, or additional damage on top of your hammer units, then they can actually be really, really strong. They're not competitive against each other in terms of slots in your army, but it's how you can use those heroes to be complementary to those slots in your army. All right, so just to go back over the idea of a reverse bodyguard. It's a hero that is going to be strong, support, and utility, that has to be quite durable so that your opponent has to commit serious power. Even something like 8 health on a 3-up save, not the most durable thing in the world, but it is serious enough that most of the hammers in the game are going to have to throw all their attacks. They can't safely split their attacks going into that. But it also has to be disposable enough that it's okay to sacrifice it sometimes. It can't be something where you lose the game as soon as that hero goes down. So look for the opportunities in your future games where you can sacrifice these tough, durable heroes. In Sylvaneth, we have a lot of these heroes. We have the Lady of Vines, we have Drycha, we have Treelord Ancient, we have Belthanos, as we talked about. And while I don't think that the Lady of Vines is going to be meta all of a sudden, I think this concept does make her stronger than most people consider for her. So I think we can use this idea of a reverse bodyguard with these other heroes in Sylvaneth or even with other factions. So I encourage you to keep this in mind during your next game. If you do have a durable hero in your army, look for the opportunity where generally you want to keep them safe so you can keep their utility around, but look for that opportunity where you can sacrifice them to keep a hammer unit safe and be able to turn things around. So if you play other factions, what other heroes from other factions would fit this role? In Sylvaneth, we do have quite a few, and I can think of some other factions like Seraphon that have these big monster heroes, the Magma Droths in the Fire Slayers. Do you find that they fit this role as well? Are they good candidates for this, or is there something that's stopping them from being good in this kind of a role? Are there any of these kinds of heroes in your current army list that maybe you could use them better than you've been using them, and that can help you to win games going forward? And also, have you ever thought about using your heroes as these sacrificial pieces to keep the hammer units alive? A lot of times I think of the heroes as being more valuable than the hammers, but there is definitely times in game where the raw power output that your hammers can do is more valuable than the heroes, and it's worth sacrificing them to keep them alive. Sacrificing the heroes to keep the hammers alive. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this helped you to understand this concept, and I'd love to hear a discussion in the comments section down below. Even if I'm just a dummy and everyone already knows all this, I would still love to hear your guys' thoughts on the topic of this video of having a hero act as a bodyguard for your regular units. Make sure you like, comment, and of course subscribe if you like this kind of talk. We mostly focus on Sylvaneth, but as we've seen in this video, we do cover a lot of other topics that can be relevant to a lot of the factions in Age of Sigmar. So that's it from me, and look forward to hearing from you below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.